Got the pen and the paper in your hand. Got the story going, but you wanted to expand. We'll help you on your journey, let us lend you a hand. Join the show. So let's write the book TV show. Grab your pen and paper and we're gonna let it flow. Talking about write the book TV. Join the show.
Welcome to Write the Book TV. I'm your host, Kimberly LaBoo. Each week we show up here interviewing authors and experts to talk about all things writing and publishing. And today we have a very special guest with us, Nathan Jarelle. He's coming to talk to us about his book, Beyond Poetry and Beyond Poetry Above and Beyond. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you here. We met some time ago at another author event, right?
Yes.
I think it was maybe Black Authors Expo or something like that, maybe?
Yes, it was in downtown Baltimore.
Downtown Baltimore.
I think it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a little bit. And so I'm happy to see that you continued in your writing.
Yes.
And so I've seen your book, your first book, described as a phenomenon of poetry and fiction rich in urban culture.
Yes.
I thought that was such a great description for that. And so how did you come up with the titles for your book?
Well, so when I was putting the storyline together, I knew I wanted to have a young man in the book who sort of used poetry as sort of a funnel to the neighborhood and the streets and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I wanted the book to be a lot deeper than just poetry, so I thought of Beyond. So
Okay.
I had a tough time coming up with the title at first, but I thought something kind of neat, maybe that could be catchy, but very, how could I say, really describes what you're experiencing throughout the book. It really is beyond poetry. So that's how I came up with it.
So are you someone who has a love for poetry? Like, is that where this is coming from?
I do like poetry, and I was thinking of how to put that together with a fictional story.
Yeah.
So that was how
That's brilliantly done.
Thank you.
Brilliantly done. I don't think I've seen that too much where it's interwoven in between there.
Yeah.
And so that's really good. I think the first thing that attracted me to your book was its cover.
Oh, thank you.
When we were at that event, you walk around looking at different vendors, but your cover is just very eye-catching and very well done. I like a well-done cover. As a publisher, it's like, oh my goodness. I love a well-done cover. So talk about your journey as a writer.
So I started writing as a young man. I think I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. And, at first then it was kind of one of those things where it was something I enjoyed doing, but I didn't really know what it could become or whether it would become anything. I just knew that I enjoyed doing it. So I just kept doing it. I kept doing it. And I would write in journals and stuff like that, but I was really, shy about sharing it with people and really talking about my writing. I would kind of, weave out of it if somebody asked me about what I like to do because I was ashamed of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, because, growing up, most of the time young men think that, we're supposed to play ball, we're supposed to be out in the streets, we're supposed to be doing this. So I didn't want people to think that I was soft just because I like to write. Because you go down to the basketball court, yo, what you do this weekend, man? I wrote my journal. You see what I mean? So I was ashamed of it. But I realized as I started to get older, hey, this is art. There's nothing to be ashamed of, and it's something you enjoy doing. So continue to do it.
Right. Wow. Well, I'm glad you did. And your books are not thin books. They are well written. So how long does it take you, or how long did it take you to write your books?
So I would say the first book took me maybe about 1.5 years to write, and I would say the second book a little under a year.
Okay.
Yeah, and so with the second book, since this is a continuation from the first, I already had a lot of the information already stored up here.
Yeah,
so I was able to just kind of go right into the second book and pick up with certain details from the first and just sort of move it over to the second one.
So share a little bit about the storyline of the first book, Beyond Poetry.
So the storyline begins during the mid-1990s. There's a young man who loses his brother due to gun violence, and he's trying to find his way since his brother's death. And rather than to go to the streets, rather than to go into sports, I wanted to give him a different weapon to use, and that was how I came up with the poetry, to give him something different. So he ends up getting expelled from school. He has a situation that goes on in school. He gets expelled, and he has to enroll into like an alternative school.
Yeah.
And he ends up meeting someone there, like a guidance counselor, if you will, who helps to really just bring out the the art that's inside of him.
Yeah.
But then he also has other challenges at home, you know, with his family life and things like that. And I try to weave in just some of the urban dynamics that we dealt with as kids. Like I know growing up, my parents always fought about money. I know it's typical in most black households, so I put that in there. I know also, I was one of the few people in my family that graduated from high school. So that was another thing in the book where, the boy's mom is always drilling to him, you gotta finish school, you gotta finish school. And that was what I went through growing up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I wanted to include those dynamics in there because I knew that as people reading it, it would kind of really, hit them in the feels for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, so you put a lot of your authentic self into it and weaved it into the storyline.
Correct, and
So
that's because
cool.
even though it's fiction, doesn't mean we don't have to tell the truth.
Exactly.
So.
Right. Yeah, that's good, and it allowed you to bring that realness into it.
That's
it's
exactly
not just
right.
a storyline. So that's good, and it was in Philly.
In Philly,
Did I
yes.
remember that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, centered in Philly. So, how do you stay motivated to write?
I think I just enjoy what I do so much that I don't. It's hard not to be motivated because I really love what I do. And the whole saying is, once you find something that you can do, you don't have to be paid for. That's really what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And since I just enjoy being a writer so much and creating stories, it's easy to just sit down and plug right into it and get carried away and keep going and going.
That's good. So, like I said, you have good sized novels. So, have you ever encountered writer's block? And if so, how did you handle that?
So sometimes when that happens, I realize just get up and just walk away. And you as artists, sometimes you get kind of stubborn where you like, no, I'm gonna figure it out. But just get up and walk away.
It.
Right. So I get up, I'll go take a walk, go have dinner. Like, and sometimes my wife would be like, hey, that's, you can come out of the room now. You know what I mean?
Emerge.
Right.
Yeah.
So let it breathe. So, and I realize sometimes that's the best thing that you can do is just put it down and leave it alone.
True.
And when I come back to it, then I'm able to pick back up on like, oh yeah, now I know what I want to do. So it's all right to just take a break sometime, and I'm still learning to do that.
Yeah. What would you say is one of the best things about being an author?
I just enjoy being able to create my own little world. With my own little characters in there, my own little street corners, and so it's just being the artist of it, the artistry of it all, and just being able to just create, and there aren't any rules, and you can just make what you want and make the characters move and interact the way you want to have them do. So I just enjoy that part of it.
I'm always fascinated by people who write fiction. That you're able to be that creative and make those stories. I write more on the nonfiction side, right?
Okay.
And so I'm always interested in hearing the thought process and how you came up with the characters and how you developed the characters. And so it's good to hear you, talking about how you've been able to do that. What is something that readers would be surprised to learn about you, the person, the author?
That's a tough question. I think that just, the poetry side of it, I studied a lot of that stuff when I was in school. I majored in English.
Okay.
So a lot of people because, sometimes authors, just because you write books doesn't mean you have to have a major or background in writing, but that is something that I did spend a lot of time studying. So when I do talk to people about, that side of it and how that did help to shape and, form my background in writing, people are surprised by that. So it's not just that I just picked up and started writing. I actually had a real love for it, and I studied it in school and would read other books and things like that. So
That's good. That's real good. And so, with the characters in your book, who would you cast to play your characters in a movie adaptation of the book?
Oh, wow.
Who would play Junior and who would play Vanessa?
So it depends because it's different time periods. So I would say if in the first book, do you remember that show with My Wife and Kids?
Yes.
Damon Wayans?
Yes.
So the boy, I can't remember his name.
I know who you're talking about.
But I think he would play a good Junior.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, was he Junior in that show?
He was. I think he was
Junior. That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say him. And that's something I'm not too sure about. Yeah, I have to think about that. But I already know who I would want to play the mother Sandy. I think Viola Davis would play a great Sandy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about a grown-up Junior?
A grown-up Junior? See, I think he can still play.
Okay, because
he
has,
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what would you say is the most rewarding part of being an author?
Writing a story, putting something together, right? And someone sends me a message on Instagram or sends me an email saying, "Hey, I just read that book, and that really touched my heart, and I couldn't put it down." You know, that's, there's no price you can put on that.
True.
When someone really takes the time to appreciate your work, and then I think just being able to finish it, because what a lot of people don't know, and I should have said this earlier, what a lot of people don't know is that before I wrote Beyond Poetry, I probably wrote 20 to 25 or 30 books or so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but see, this was during a time period where I was afraid to share my work and things like that, so a lot of those books just kind of, unfortunately, went to the wayside. So for me, when I wrote the first book, it was just I felt just such an accomplishment just to finish it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
True.
And then to put it on the shelf. And I remember when I first went into Barnes and Noble and saw it on the shelf, and I'm like, I wrote that. That it was one of the best feelings in the world.
So of course I want to talk about that.
Okay.
You just had a book signing in
Yes.
Barnes and Noble, so your book is in there. What is that like for you as an author? Because so many authors aspire to, that's the end all be all. I want to make it into Barnes and Noble. I want to do a book signing in Barnes and Noble.
Yes.
So what was that experience like for you?
I mean, it was just phenomenal. I mean, you have to get to a point, I think, in your writing, and whether you're a painter or whatever, where the money doesn't matter. And just the fact that you have a platform and an ability to allow people to see what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, in these days, it's much easier for artists to do that because we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have all these different platforms.
Yeah.
So you don't need the major publishers.
But people still want it.
Yeah. But see, and I'm glad I reached this point in my journey where those things don't matter and all the noise and hype doesn't matter. I'm at a point where just being able to do it, just being in a position to do it, because so many people don't have that luxury.
Right.
So I feel very honored and blessed. So the fact that I was able to set up a table in Barnes and Noble and people actually came over and spoke to me, it just warmed my heart.
Huge, yeah. And so because people think it's easy, but it's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
It's not easy. So can you talk a little bit about what it took for you to actually make that happen?
The first thing is just the resiliency, because most of the times we get in our own way and we convince and I did it for a lot of years, we tell ourselves that, I can't do it, I'm not going to finish it, it's too much, and you give up, but I think that's the first step, is just having that determination to finish and to just continue to move forward with it. So motivate, and you have to be self-motivated because when you're engaged in your art, right, there's not going to be a lot of people standing over you saying, oh, you got to do it, you got to do it. So you have to tell yourself that, you know what I mean? And I think that's extremely important. So I think that's step one.
Yeah.
And step two is finding something that you like to write about. Finding something that you like to paint about, paint, or if you're into photography, where do you enjoy taking photos at? I think those things are important. So doing what you enjoy doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next? Like, is it a third book coming? Is this series going to continue? Or are you working on something new?
The series is going to continue. I'm planning for maybe a 5-book series.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so I have a third one that's currently in the works.
Nice.
And while that's getting some stuff done, I'm working on the fourth one. And then I just want to just keep writing as many
That's
books as I
good
can.
stuff.
So I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
So you talked about what it's like to get the kudos for your book. Have you ever experienced the flip side of that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I mean, and that's the other side of it too. You know, is that not everybody will, you know, like your work, and I think that sometimes as artists, you know, it's easy to get discouraged when those things happen. But that's what one thing I always tell people when you whatever it is you're doing, make sure you love it first before you expect other people to love it.
That's good.
Because like I've had people jump in my DMs and be like, I had one lady jump in my DMs and was like, how could you write a book like that?
Oh wow.
And that's offensive or something crazy like
Okay.
that, you know. But again, you know, it's out there, and
it's not for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then sometimes, you know, people may buy your book or they may say I have it, but then, you know, they didn't read it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but just I think that sometimes you just have to not worry so much about how people respond to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you won't always get the reaction you want. So just hang your hat on the fact that you enjoy it and it is something that's. Make sure you love it, I guess.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. So, have you thought about actually having one of your books adapted into a movie? Because that's happening more and more now with authors. And so I know several authors who have actually had that opportunity, and it's been really great. So would you? Yeah, you said that would be good. Right?
That would be awesome if I could do that.
Because I think storylines like that, I could see how it could translate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a movie and Netflix or something.
Yeah, so he said something. What advice would you have for the young Black man who is coming up through, you know, high school, whatever, and is a writer? It may feel like you felt during those times, as far as it not being the quote unquote norm thing to do as a young Black man.
I would just say to keep at it and to block out all noise, and to make certain that you don't let those outside interferences, you don't let those people get into your ear, you don't let them get into your head, and tell you that you shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
And that comes back to making sure that you love this enough that you want to do it, that those things don't matter. Because even as you progress through your writing journey, you will always have those things, especially and you know it gets even crazier as you rise up the ladder.
Yeah.
So I think while you're at the bottom and while you're developing your talent, just making sure that you don't focus so much on the hype of it, but just the love for it. Love it first. You know. So I would say to make sure you do that. And I also want to say too that sometimes I notice, especially in today's world with, you know, the social media and everything, and the sensationalism and all that kind of stuff, you know, it's easy to lose sight of that. So turn off Instagram and Facebook and just dive into what it is you're doing. Dive into your craft. So I would say that.
That's good. What other things have you done with your book? I know you've done the book signing in Barnes and Noble, but for the person that's watching, I love you had the envelope that had the book cover. You got really creative. You had your card in there that said thank you, that had your picture on it, your bookmark. So what other tips would you give to writers that are out here that are trying to sell books or promote books?
You know, I would say first, this is extremely important. Have a website, because again, going back to these platforms like Facebook and Instagram and things like that. See, we don't own that stuff.
That's right.
So your website you actually own. But if all you have is an Instagram or Facebook, you know, they can cancel that at any day, and then you don't have nothing. So
you see what happens when it glitches just for a couple hours.
Exactly.
People lose their minds.
Exactly. So your your website is your hub. You know, you have all of your information there and stuff. So if people need to reach you, they can go directly there. They can email you or send you mail, what have you.
See, I do bring it.
Yeah.
So I thought this was just really great when you were like, do you want the bag or do you want the? I'm like, I want the package. This is really nice. So I just think it's really good when authors get creative. You had your bookmark, and there's another card in here. I think it was a thank you card.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I kept all that. The thank you
okay.
card.
Yeah.
And so when it's like that, it makes it harder for somebody to just toss your stuff.
Yeah.
When we see that you've put a certain amount of effort into it, it's like, oh wow, this author is serious, right?
And that's the thing, yeah. You want to come across as serious and you want to be professional.
Absolutely.
And you almost want to represent it as if it's a brand.
Yes,
And,
but it is.
Exactly.
It is.
So,
You are your author brand.
That's right.
You're right. And so I was just like so tickled by that when I saw that. I was like, oh, I had not seen anybody do that before.
Yes.
And so I think it's really important for our authors to think outside of the box. And a lot of times when, you know, they do it, they write the book, and it's like, okay, well, now what?
Yeah.
You know, it's like the book's not going to sell itself.
That's right.
You know, and you wrote that first book a while ago, but yet I still see you, you know, going forward. And they say the best way to sell book one is to write book two.
That's right.
And so I'm really, really excited to see you continuing on with this. And so what's next for you? I know you said you have books 3 and 4. Any book tours or any more book signings coming up? Or?
So I'm working on that stuff right now.
Okay.
I'm not sure about for the rest of this year, but I know 2024 I have another book that I want to release, and
Nice.
I plan on pushing that book a lot harder than the other 2 books if I can,
Nice.
of course.
That's
and
awesome.
just whatever comes my way, and sometimes it's also good sometimes as you're working to take a little break and do some research and see what else is out there, how else you can just promote yourself. So and that's how I come up with some of these nifty ideas. So,
yeah.
my whole goal is to just continue to get better.
Do you think that you'll ever dabble in the nonfiction space?
Oh, I can definitely see that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be great.
So I have books in mind for years to come. So
yeah, and then when you said all those ones that never made it,
yeah,
well, they can still make it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So this has been great. I do want you to tell our viewing audience where they can get connected with you, where they can find you on social media, and so you'll do that.
Okay. So you can find me on my website, which is natejreads.com. My Instagram handle is author.natej. And on Facebook, it's I am Nate J. So those are my main platforms that you can find me on. Again, the website is natejreads.com.
Awesome. Do you have any last minute advice for a writer out there who is contemplating writing their book? What would you say to them?
Write that book, okay? You gotta, and you have to do it for yourself. And it's such an accomplishment to do it. Even if you don't make any money off of it, just do it, because that's something that can last for years to come, long after you're gone. That's something you can give to your family. So make sure you write that book.
Amen.
You won't regret it.
That's right. It has been such a joy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming here. I never take it lightly when people show up and bless our audience. So thank you so much. It's been a joy having you. Absolutely. And thank you so much to our viewing audience for showing up for another segment of Write the Book TV. If you are thinking about writing a book, or you know someone else who should write a book, head on over to www.writethebook.tv.com and connect with us there. See you next week.
Write the Book TV. Join the show.
If you think you are ready to write a book or you know someone who is interested in writing a book, head on over to www.writethebooktv.com and connect with us there. Until next week, bye bye.